You open one of these AI tools and you type what you want. Fix this bug, summarize this folder, ship this feature. And then this thing goes to work. It opens your files, it runs commands, it remembers what your project is, it stops to ask permission before it deletes something. It feels like one single creature doing all of that. And you probably call the whole thing the model or just the AI. But here is the strange part, the model did almost none of what you just watched. There is a word for the part that did do all of that, and you've probably heard it thrown around without anyone stopping to define it. The word is harness. So here is the question I want to answer by the end. When you use one of these tools, where does the model actually end? And what is the software wrapped around it doing all the rest? Because once you can see the line between those two things, every AI tool you touch is going to make a lot more sense. So let's start with the model on its own with nothing around it. A raw language model does exactly one thing. You hand it some text and it predicts what text should come next, and then it stops. That's the whole job. Text goes in, text comes out, like a very good function. And it's worth sitting with what that means because it's easy to miss. On its own, the model has no memory of the last time you talked to it. It can't open a file, run a command, check a website, or press a single button. It can't even look at its own answer and decide to try again. All it can do is read the text you give it and produce more text. Everyone pictures the model as the whole robot walking around and doing things. But by itself, it's just the part that thinks, a brain in a jar with no hands and no eyes. So, how did that brain in a jar just fix your bug and edit your files? It didn't. The harness did. The harness is all the software wrapped around the model that turns a text predictor into something that actually gets work done. And it's worth taking that word literally because it's doing real work. A harness is the set of straps you put on a powerful animal, a horse, or an ox. It doesn't make the animal one bit stronger. It just points all that raw strength at something useful and keeps it from wandering off. That is exactly the relationship here. The harness doesn't make the model smarter. It takes the raw intelligence and aims it at real work. So there is one line that holds this whole video together, and let me just say it plainly. The model thinks and the harness acts. The model can only ever produce text. The harness is the thing that reads that text and does something real on the model's behalf. When the model opens a file, it didn't open anything. It wrote a sentence asking for a file, and the harness is what went and opened it. Every action you watch at the start, every file and command and permission prompt, that was the harness, not the model. Now here is the piece that makes the whole thing come alive, and it's simpler than it sounds. It's a loop. Watch what actually happens when you ask this thing to fix a bug. The model can't touch your files, so it doesn't try. Instead, it writes a little request. I need to read this file. That request has a name you've probably heard without a definition, a tool call. The model doesn't run the tool, it just emits the call in a format the harness is built to recognize. The harness sees that tool call, goes and reads the file, and pastes the contents back to the model as more text. Now the model has read the file in the only way it can, by being handed the text. So it writes the next request, change this line and run the tests. The harness does that too and pastes the result back. And this just goes around and around. Model writes a request, harness carries it out and reports back, model decides the next step. Round and round until the model writes one last line. It's done. And here's the thing I really want you to notice. In that entire loop, the model never once touched your computer. It only ever wrote text, and the harness did every real thing. That loop, a model deciding and a harness doing over and over, is exactly what people mean when they say the word agent. An agent isn't a smarter model. It's a model running inside a harness that loops. Running that loop is the harness's biggest job, but it quietly does three more. The first is tools: search the web, run a command, edit a file, call some other service. The model can only ask for these in text, and the harness is what makes each one real. The list of tools it hands the model is a choice someone made. The second job is context. The model can only read so much text at once, so something has to decide what to put in front of it, what to summarize, and what to leave out. That deciding is the harness, and when you hear the phrase context management, this is what it means. The third job is the rules. The permissions, the ask before you delete, the list of what this thing is even allowed to touch. None of that lives in the model. The guardrails are built into the harness. And here is the part that makes it click, because you've been looking at one this whole time. If you've ever used an AI coding tool, you've used a harness. The tool is the harness, and the model is the brain sitting inside it. The tool is the body, reading your files, running your commands, keeping track of your project, asking before it does something risky. And once you see it that way, you can pull the two apart. Swap the brain for a different model, and it's the same harness with a new mind inside it. Keep the same model but move to a different tool, and it's the same brain wearing a different body. And this is the part most people miss, even people who use these tools all day. The exact same model can feel dull in one tool and genuinely brilliant in another. That gap, the one everybody blames on the model, is almost entirely the harness. Better tools, more room to think, cleaner rules, and the same brain suddenly looks a lot smarter. The chat app you use, the coding tool, the little agents people build at work. Every one of them is a harness with a model dropped inside. The model is the engine, and the harness is the whole car built around it. So why does any of this matter beyond sounding smart at work? It matters because of one question you can now ask every time an AI tool disappoints you. Was that the model, or was that the harness? And once you start asking it, you notice almost every complaint you've had is really a harness problem wearing a disguise. It gave you out-of-date information. It probably had no way to search the web. That's a missing tool. It forgot what you told it 10 minutes ago. Something dropped that from its context. That's context management. It flat out refused to touch your files or your database. That's a rule someone set. That's the guardrails. None of those are the model being stupid. And that distinction changes what you do next. A wall made of harness will not move just because a smarter model comes out next month. But a better harness, one more tool, more room, a rule loosened, fixes it today. And a lot of the time, you can improve the harness yourself. Give it the context it was missing, turn on the tool it needed, adjust the rule that was in the way. You have far more leverages than just sitting around waiting for a smarter model. So back to the question from the start. When you use one of these tools, where does the model end? It ends at the thinking. Everything else was the harness. Every file it opened, every command it ran, every time it remembered your project or asked before deleting. You've been driving the car and calling it the engine. The model is the part that thinks, and the harness is everything that lets it act. And now that you can see the seam between them, you're going to spot it in every AI tool you ever touch.